The sun was a ruthless overseer that day, blazing down over the manicured streets of the neighborhood, bouncing off the white picket fences and freshly painted driveways. Heat shimmered off the asphalt, turning the corner into a golden blur. At that corner, almost invisible in the grand landscape of wealth and order, stood a small wooden lemonade stand. Its paint was chipped in places, bright yellow fading to a duller hue, but someone had carefully scrawled a banner across the front. Fresh lemonade, 50 cents. Behind it stood Aaliyah, a 10-year-old girl with a mop of tight curls tied into 2 ponytails, beads glinting faintly in the sunlight. Sweat slicked her forehead, her little arms sticky from squeezing lemons, and her hands trembled slightly as she wiped at her brow with the back of her hand. Her dark eyes scanned the street, darting from car to car, searching for anyone who might slow down, anyone who might notice her. The street was full of motion, but not of attention. Cars rushed past, tires humming on smooth asphalt, wind whipping through the tinted windows of luxury vehicles. Inside those cars, faces were unreadable, eyes shielded by sunglasses, ears plugged with music or conversation. Each one passed without so much as a glance, leaving Aaliyah standing small against the world, a single cup in her hand, her voice timid as she called out, "Lemonade, sir?" But the street remained indifferent. The sun bore down, relentless and hot, and even the small breeze that tried to pass through the neighborhood seemed to carry a weight, almost like it was pressing down on her shoulders along with every passing eye that ignored her. Then it happened. A sleek black SUV rolled slowly around the corner, its polished body gleaming in the sunlight. The car halted in front of her stand, engine idling. Aaliyah's stomach flipped. Maybe this time, maybe this one would stop. The door swung open, and out stepped Mr. Harrison, a man whose very presence seemed to bend the air. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a crisp navy suit, the kind of suit that smelled of money in boardrooms. His hair was perfectly combed, his shoes gleaming, but his gaze was glued to his phone, scrolling, swiping, eyes narrowing at the screen. Not at her, not at the stand, not at the summer sun beating down on a little girl trying to make her way in a world that had already overlooked her. Aaliyah's voice caught in her throat, but she tried again, louder this time, her words trembling with hope and fear all at once. "Lemonade, sir?" She stepped forward, hand extended, cup trembling. Mr. Harrison's eyes flickered up for barely a second, enough to register a polite but dismissive smile. Then his attention snapped back to the phone in his hand, as if she were a ghost in the corner of his vision. He walked past her, elegant shoes clicking against the pavement. Not a word, not a glance, nothing. The world seemed to pause for a moment, then continued without her. Aaliyah's shoulders slumped, the heat of the sun burning into her back like a punishment. Her chest heaved in frustration, but she didn't cry, not yet. Around her, the quiet hum of the street seemed louder, filled with judgment she hadn't asked for. Neighbors glanced toward her as they passed, some with pity, some with indifference. A woman pushing a stroller murmured something under her breath, a smirk barely hidden. A man in a crisp golf shirt shook his head and walked on. And still, the little girl remained, her hands tightening around the pitcher of lemonade like a shield. The camera would linger on that moment if you could see it. The sweat sliding down her neck, the dust swirling in the sunlight, the heat that pressed in from every side, the weight of being invisible in a world full of eyes. Aaliyah took a slow, measured breath. Her little chest rose and fell with determination, not with fear. That single dismissive glance, that small brush of arrogance, could have broken her, but it didn't. Her jaw set. She adjusted the banner on the stand, straightening the corners, smoothing the wrinkles. She wiped at the tiny tear threatening to escape her eye and shoved it away with the back of her hand. She looked at the cup she held, at the bright yellow pitcher, at the few remaining lemons glistening like little suns in the bowl. And in that quiet, almost cinematic stillness, a spark of resolve ignited inside her. It was a resolve not born from arrogance but from necessity. She had a job to do. She had a mission, small as it seemed, but hers. She would not let the indifference of the world, not even the dismissal of the richest man in the neighborhood, define her. Her fingers tightened around the pitcher. Her heart pounded in her chest, not with fear, but with the steady rhythm of courage. The street continued around her, Cars buzzing past, wind brushing against her skin, voices drifting like distant echoes. None of it mattered. She had something to prove, and it wasn't just about lemonade. The scene is quiet, yet loud with tension. Every detail becomes a symbol of the moment. The sweat dripping from her hairline, the sticky remnants of squeezed lemons on her hands, the heat pressing down on her small frame, the weight of eyes that barely notice her. Even the gentle breeze that blows dust across the stand seems to carry a narrative of struggle, of persistence, of a world not yet ready to recognize her worth. She straightens her shoulders, and though she is 10, though she is small, she occupies her space fully. The summer sun may blaze, the street may be indifferent, the SUV may carry a man who could dismiss her with a glance, but she stands. And unbeknownst to anyone walking past, anyone looking at the scene from their air-conditioned cars or polished lawns, something is about to happen. Something quiet, something subtle, but monumental. This small, ignored girl will set into motion a chain of events that will ripple far beyond the corner of that street, beyond the judgments and dismissals of neighbors, beyond the arrogant gaze of Mr. Harrison. The world will soon be forced to notice. And when it does, the impact will leave hearts trembling, some in awe, some in shame, some in tears. Aaliyah's hands shake slightly as she lifts the pitcher. Her eyes flick toward the SUV, now a shadow across the driveway, then back to the cup she offers, the humble sign, the small wooden stand. The camera would linger on her again. Determination etched into her young face, a single bead of sweat sliding down, her little fingers gripping the wood like a lifeline. This is a moment before the storm, the moment before the world shifts its gaze, before the balance of power begins to tilt in ways no one could anticipate. And though the street seems silent, though Mr. Harrison walks away unconcerned, though the heat presses down, something larger is already stirring. She takes a deep breath, lets it out slowly, and straightens her back. The lemonade stand, small as it is, becomes a beacon, not just a juice, not just a coins earned, but a spirit. Aaliyah is no longer just a girl behind a stand. She is courage in motion. She is dignity in the face of dismissal. And in a few short hours, this quiet, almost forgotten corner of the street will witness a shift. A powerful man will be forced to look up. The street will stop, even if just for a moment. And a little girl, ignored in the sun, will become the one everyone remembers. The summer sun beats down, but now it feels different. It feels like a spotlight. And in that light, Aaliyah waits. The word about Aaliyah's little lemonade stand spread faster than she could have imagined. By mid-morning, a small group of neighborhood kids had gathered near the corner, their shoes scuffing the pavement, their voices loud and sharp against the quiet hum of the summer street. "Who's going to buy your tiny lemonade anyway?" one of them shouted, a sneer twisting his face. Another laughed, pointing at the handmade sign that fluttered unevenly in the breeze. Aaliyah's hands froze around the pitcher for a moment, her knuckles whitening. She swallowed hard but didn't look away. She had learned already that flinching made them bolder, made the world feel bigger than it should. Her mother watched from the porch, leaning slightly against a railing, her expression a mix of worry and quiet pride. She had seen that spark in her daughter before, the same spark that made her stand taller than she had any reason to, even in the face of laughter or scorn. Cars continued to roll past, each one a momentary hope, slowing as though the occupants might notice her, might stop, might give her the chance she had been waiting for. But every vehicle eventually drove on. Windows rolled up, radios played, sunglasses hid expressions. Each refusal pressed down on her small shoulders, a weight that could have crushed a lesser resolve. But Aaliyah tightened her grip on the pitcher, lifted her chin, and breathed. The air was heavy, warm, carrying the smells of freshly cut grass, hot asphalt, and lemon zest. Even the heat seemed determined to test her patience, but she refused to give in. By mid-afternoon, the black SUV returned. Its engine hummed like a challenge as it rolled slowly toward her stand. Mr. Harrison stepped out again, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement, a half-smile on his lips, curiosity flickering in his eyes. He looked at the stand, at the girl, at the tiny world she had carved from nothing, and asked, "Are you still selling this?" His tone was casual, but carried the subtle weight of condescension, the kind that made a person feel small even when they were standing their ground. Aaliyah's gaze met his without flinching, her voice steady. Yes, sir. Would you like some? He laughed then, soft, almost cruel, shaking his head as if the idea itself was absurd. The neighbors leaned slightly from behind hedges and porch railings, whispering, exchanging glances that mingled disbelief and quiet amusement. Aaliyah could feel their eyes on her, weighing her, judging her. For a moment, it would have been easier to put down the pitcher, to retreat, to let the street and its wealthy inhabitants have the victory of her absence. But she did not move. She straightened the banner again, ran her small hand over the wooden edge of the stand, and poured the lemonade with care. The sun caught the condensation on the pitcher, droplets sliding down like tiny tears of persistence. Each laugh, each whisper, each mocking glance became fuel. She repeated her pitch quietly, rehearsing in her head like a soldier preparing for battle. Every detail mattered. The tilt of her head, the steadiness of her hand, the firmness in her voice. Fresh lemonade, 50 cents. Made with my grandma's secret syrup. Would you like to try a cup? She practiced until it rolled off her tongue naturally, confident, even as the world tried to tell her she didn't matter. The children continued their teasing, but now Aaliyah felt it differently. The words no longer struck her with a sting of surprise. They were just noise, distractions, tiny ripples in the heat of the afternoon. She moved with purpose, small feet scuffing the concrete as she shifted to get a better angle for a passerby, her curls bouncing slightly with each movement. Her mother's presence from the porch reminded her that someone saw her efforts, that someone believed even when the world laughed. That belief, silent but steady, fortified her courage. Mr. Harrison lingered near the car, observing, still amused but intrigued now. There was something different about the girl this time, something he hadn't noticed the first time he dismissed her. She didn't beg. She didn't whine. She simply stood, small but unyielding, offering her lemonade with dignity. The quiet power in her posture forced him to consider, if only for a moment, that he might have underestimated her. Around them, the street seemed to hum with tension. Even the air felt thicker, charged with anticipation. Pedestrians slowed slightly, curious, sensing that something important was unfolding on this otherwise ordinary corner. Hours passed. The sunlight shifted from harsh overhead brilliance to the warmer tones of late afternoon. The shadows grew longer, stretching across the sidewalk, across the stand, across Aaliyah herself, as if the world was elongating her efforts, magnifying the small drama of her persistence. Each passerby had a choice, to ignore, to mock, to engage, and every choice reinforced a lesson that was quietly writing itself in the hearts of those watching. Children nudged each other, murmuring, some beginning to see the courage in the tiny girl who refused to yield. Even the adults could not entirely turn away. Aaliyah's lips were dry, her throat scratchy from speaking, her arms sticky from sweat and lemons, but she continued. Each cup poured was an act of defiance, each word spoken a statement of her unbroken will. The heat, the judgment, the dismissal, they all became part of the backdrop, like a storm testing the strength of the little lighthouse she had erected at the corner of the street. And slowly, imperceptibly at first, the street began to pay attention. The whispers turned into soft comments of encouragement. Look at that girl, she doesn't even flinch. I can't believe she's still standing. Even Mr. Harrison found himself shifting in place. He had come expecting to be amused, to see a minor annoyance, perhaps to entertain himself by showing his wealth or superiority. Instead, he felt a twinge of something he hadn't anticipated. Respect. Not for him, not for his money, but for her, for a girl who had nothing but her courage and her lemonade, and yet commanded more dignity than the many who lived in that neighborhood. By the time the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, Aaliyah stood tall against a backdrop of gold-tinged sky, sweat-matted hair to her forehead, but her eyes were bright. The day's relentless teasing, the dismissals, the laughter, it had all failed to make her small. She had endured, she had persisted, and in her endurance, something remarkable began to take shape. She was no longer just a girl with a lemonade stand. She had become a figure of quiet resistance, a testament to what courage looks like in its purest form. The street, which had once been indifferent, seemed to hold its breath now. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. Children tiptoed closer. Adults paused on the sidewalk, all watching this small drama unfold. Even the air itself felt heavy with anticipation, like the moment before a great storm or the silence just before applause. Aaliyah's mother exhaled slowly, pride shining in her eyes, knowing that whatever happened next, her daughter had already won something far greater than money. She had won the right to stand undiminished, to persist without apology, to claim space in a world that had tried so hard to overlook her. And Mr. Harrison, standing near his luxury car, felt a shift inside him, a quiet acknowledgement that the value of a person is not measured by the size of their car, the suit they wear, or the wealth they control. Sometimes, it is measured in small acts of persistence, in the dignity with which one meets scorn and mockery, in the courage to continue even when the world turns its gaze elsewhere. He watched as Aaliyah adjusted the picture, straightened the banner again, and rehearsed her pitch once more, each movement a small, stubborn triumph. As the sun dipped lower, the golden light catching the picture in her curls, it became clear to everyone watching that something was about to happen. The day's narrative, once defined by mockery and dismissal, was poised for a shift. Aaliyah's persistence had laid the groundwork for an unexpected turn, one that would force those who laughed, those who ignored, and even a billionaire who thought himself untouchable, to witness the strength of a little girl who refused to be diminished. And in that quiet corner, against a backdrop of heat, sweat, laughter, and disbelief, Aaliyah waited, waiting for the moment when the world, at last, would have no choice but to pay attention. The late afternoon sun draped the neighborhood in gold, painting long shadows across the pavement and giving everything a kind of sacred, slow-motion quality. Aaliyah's small lemonade stand glowed in that light, the yellow paint catching the sun like it was holding on to hope itself. Her arms were tired, sticky from lemons and sugar, but her resolve remained unshaken. The teasing had quieted, the whispers of mockery fading into the soft rustle of leaves and the distant hum of engines. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw her father approaching, a small wooden box cradled carefully in his hands. The box was hand-carved, worn with years of use, its edges rounded and smooth from decades of handling. He knelt beside her stand, setting the box gently on the edge, and opened it slowly, revealing a fresh batch of homemade cookies, each one golden brown, warm, and slightly fragrant with hints of cinnamon and chocolate. Aaliyah's eyes lit up, her tiredness forgotten in the moment of quiet preparation. Mr. Harrison's black SUV slowed near the curb, the engine lowering to a gentle hum. He leaned forward slightly, curiosity flickering across his face, a shadow of the arrogance that had marked his previous visits. Something about the little wooden box, the careful arrangement of cookies, the bright girl behind the stand, drew him in. Aaliyah straightened her posture, lifted her chin, and took a slow, steadying breath. She spoke clearly, her voice calm but confident, carrying the weight of pride and dignity. I mix the lemons with my grandma's secret syrup. The cookies are baked fresh every morning, she said, holding her cup out. Every word was deliberate, practiced, yet warm, inviting, and sincere. Mr. Harrison hesitated. The pause stretched between them like an invisible bridge of tension. The camera lingers on him for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studies her. This was no ordinary lemonade stand. There was something in the way she presented herself, something in the attention to detail, the quiet dignity in her posture, that unsettled him. The first sip he took was almost ritualistic. Silence stretched as the liquid touched his lips, tart and sweet, a hint of syrup lingering in the warm air. He set the cup down for a heartbeat, savoring the pause, listening to the street that had grown quiet with anticipation. Then he reached for a cookie, breaking it in half and bringing it to his mouth. The reaction was immediate. His eyes widened, a flash of recognition crossing his face. The smile he had worn so often, arrogant, dismissive, slipped for a fraction of a second. He whispered, almost to himself, "This is incredible." The street seemed to still. Pedestrians stopped mid-step, their ears catching the faint words. Children watching from the corners widened their eyes in awe. Aaliyah's father allowed himself a small, proud nod from the side, but he did not speak. The moment belonged to her. The quiet, unexpected brilliance of her craft had shifted something entirely. The power dynamics of the day, the invisible hierarchy that had marked Mr. Harrison as untouchable, unchallengeable, crumbled in the face of skill, dignity, and persistence. Aaliyah did not gloat. She did not cry out in triumph. She simply stood there, small yet unyielding, as if the day's previous mockery, the dismissive smiles, and the harsh judgments of adults and children alike were nothing more than background noise. Her pride shone through her calm confidence. She had proven herself not by arguing, not by demanding respect, but by demonstrating her talent. Each measured movement, the careful pour of lemonade, the slight tilt of the cookie tray, the steady gaze she met with every passerby, all spoke volumes. Wealth, she silently declared, did not equate to superiority. Authority did not automatically command respect. Skill, effort, and dignity commanded it far more powerfully. Mr. Harrison's hands lingered over the cup, over the cookie, almost as if touching them was an acknowledgement of something he had not expected. Humility, the billionaire, accustomed to controlling every room, every conversation, every narrative, now felt the stirrings of respect for a child 10 years old, standing tall despite the dismissals, the heat, the mockery. His laughter from earlier visits, soft, almost cruel, was gone, replaced by a quiet awe. He found himself leaning back slightly, watching her, listening, noticing details he had missed before. The way her curls caught the light, the way her hands moved with purpose, the little beads of sweat on her brow that did not diminish her confidence. The world had often tried to make her small, and yet here she stood, quietly turning that world upside down. Children at the corner gasped quietly, nudging one another, whispering, pointing, their teasing forgotten in the presence of something remarkable. Even adults stopped their conversations mid-step or mid-laugh to witness the quiet transformation. The air, heavy with heat and expectation, seemed charged with the recognition that they were all seeing something extraordinary. A little girl, ignored all day, dismissed by wealth and privilege, had shifted the balance of power not by force, but by sheer presence and skill. Aaliyah's posture did not falter. Her eyes remained steady, her back straight, her small hands moving with care as she offered a cookie to another child, a neighbor leaning in, intrigued. She smiled faintly, a gesture so subtle it might have gone unnoticed had it not been for the charged silence surrounding her. It was a smile of someone who had endured, who had persisted, who had waited for the moment when the world might finally recognize her worth. And in that smile, there was no arrogance, only dignity, pride, and the quiet power of resilience. Mr. Harrison, now fully engaged, allowed himself a moment to examine the details he had overlooked. The handcrafted cookies, their aroma rich and inviting, the careful mixing of lemonade, tart and sweet, with a hint of syrup that spoke of love and tradition. Every little choice, every deliberate act, became a statement. Each one silently said, "I am worth noticing. I am worth respect. I am not to be dismissed." And for a man who had lived a life measuring value in millions, in influence, in control, the revelation was startling. Wealth, he realized, could not buy authenticity. The street seemed to hold its collective breath, caught in the quiet drama of recognition. Aaliyah's mother let herself exhale for the first time all day, knowing that the lesson had been delivered. This was more than lemonade, more than cookies. It was a demonstration of strength, courage, and grace under pressure. Every mocking laugh, every dismissive glance had only sharpened the impact of this moment. By choosing to remain steadfast, by refusing to shrink, Aaliyah had taught everyone around her, children, neighbors, and even a billionaire, a lesson in humility, dignity, and the power of quiet talent. Mr. Harrison finally nodded, a gesture small but monumental. The recognition in his eyes said more than words ever could. In that instant, the street witnessed a reversal. The rich man, accustomed to dictating who mattered and who did not, had been humbled. The little girl, once overlooked, had claimed her space fully. Pedestrians, children, and neighbors felt the shift. Some blinked rapidly, struggling to comprehend what they had seen. Others whispered softly, sharing awe and wonder. And through it all, Aaliyah simply continued her work, pouring lemonade, adjusting her tray, meeting each gaze with calm confidence. As the sun dipped lower, casting the neighborhood in amber light, the air thick with the scent of lemons and baked cookies, the power dynamics of the day had entirely transformed. The billionaire who had walked past her without a second glance now stood humbled, watching a child demonstrate a grace and talent he had not expected. Aaliyah had not begged. She had not cried. She had shown. And in showing, she had taught. The street would not forget this moment. The children would carry the lesson of courage and persistence. The adults will remember the quiet dignity of a little girl who refused to shrink. And Mr. Harrison, perhaps for the first time in years, understood a truth no amount of money could teach. Worth is measured not by wealth, but by character, skill. The sun hung low, casting long, warm shadows across the quiet street, turning the lemonade stand into a small beacon of gold. The air smelled of sugar, lemon, and baked cookies, rich and sweet, almost sacred in its simplicity. Aaliyah's hands were sticky from lemons and syrup, but she moved with quiet grace, pouring the lemonade carefully, lining up cups as if each one carried the weight of the world. Pedestrians had begun to slow, lingering in the fading light, whispering among themselves, exchanging glances of disbelief and wonder. Children hovered near the stand, their teasing forgotten, mouths slightly open, eyes wide. Adults leaned over fences, pausing in their evening routines, caught in the unexpected magic of a young girl who had refused to be overlooked. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, brushing across the street in gentle waves as though acknowledging the moment. From the black SUV, Mr. Harrison stepped out, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement with a sound that carried authority. But this time, it was tempered by humility. The arrogance that had marked his earlier visits was gone, replaced by a quiet respect, almost reverence, for the little girl who had upended the balance of power in the most unexpected way. He approached the stand slowly, scanning the lemonade, the cookies, and the careful hands that had created them. He picked up a dozen cups, each one heavy with cold, sweet liquid and several cookies, holding them with care, his expression serious, almost reflective. This was not an act of mockery, not an indulgent purchase to amuse himself. This was an act of acknowledgement, of validation. He was seeing her now, truly seeing her for the first time. Aaliyah watched him, standing tall, head high, her curls catching the sunlight like small crowns. Her eyes met his, steady and unwavering. She did not smile too soon, did not shrink back, did not beg. She simply waited, letting her work, her effort, and her quiet brilliance speak for her. The street seemed to hold its breath, neighbors frozen in place, children whispering, adults gripping railings or leaning on fences, all witnesses to something extraordinary. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat and spoke, his voice low but carrying over the still street. "You have an incredible gift. You've taught me something today I will never forget." The words landed like a soft thunderclap, rolling through the crowd, shaking loose emotions that had been building all afternoon. Some neighbors wiped tears from their eyes, discreetly or openly, unable to hide the swell of emotion that Aaliyah's courage and talent had evoked. Others smiled, some shaking their heads in disbelief, as if trying to comprehend how one little girl, barely 10, had transformed the day, the street, and even a billionaire's perspective. Children watched her with awe, their previous mockery forgotten, replaced with admiration. Aaliyah's mother hurried forward, wrapping her daughter in a tight embrace, whispering in her ear, "See, you never give up." The warmth of her mother's hug, the reassurance in her voice, mingled with the golden sunlight, and for a moment, it felt as if time had slowed to honor the triumph of persistence. Mr. Harrison watched them, feeling the weight of the lesson unfold before him. He took a slow, deliberate breath and turned to face the small crowd that had gathered, his expression composed but glowing with acknowledgement. "I want everyone to see this," he said, holding the cups and cookies slightly aloft. "This young lady has taught me a lesson about courage, persistence, and dignity, something too many of us forget in the world of wealth and power." He paused, letting the words sink in. The neighbors shifted, exchanging glances, some nodding, others silent, caught between tears and smiles. Aaliyah's small figure, standing behind her stand, suddenly seemed larger than life, not because of size, but because of the strength radiating from her. Then, in a moment that transformed the street entirely, Mr. Harrison made a small announcement. He would fund Aaliyah's lemonade business, personally mentoring her in entrepreneurship, recognizing her ingenuity, creativity, and spirit. The words traveled through the street like fire through dry grass. Children gasped, neighbors whispered, and some even wiped their eyes, understanding the gravity of what had just happened. Aaliyah's mother exhaled, a mixture of pride and relief flooding her chest. Her daughter, who had stood tall all afternoon against mockery, condescension, and dismissal, would now be rewarded not just with money, but with the recognition and opportunity she had earned through her own persistence. Aaliyah's face glowed with a quiet, radiant pride. She continued to pour lemonade with her small, steady hands, arranging cups, adjusting the cookies with care. But now there was a lightness in her movements, a joy that had nothing to do with coins collected and everything to do with dignity affirmed. The sunlight caught the beads of sweat on her brow and the glint in her eyes, turning a long, hard day into a moment of triumph that would live in memory for those who witnessed it. Even the wind seemed to dance around her, playful and warm, as if celebrating the quiet victory of persistence over dismissal. Mr. Harrison knelt slightly, handing her a cup to refill, his posture uncharacteristically deferential. "You've earned this," he said softly, letting her see the sincerity in his eyes. "Not because I decide who deserves anything, but because you showed the world what true talent and courage look like." Aaliyah nodded, her head held high, taking the cup with calm composure, her hands steady. She did not gloat. She did not boast. She did not allow pride to tip into arrogance. Her victory was quiet, powerful, and complete. Neighbors watched as the small act of recognition became a lesson for the entire street. Children leaned closer, curiosity sparkling in their eyes. Adults shifted in place, realizing that in their judgments and casual dismissals, they had underestimated the quiet power of determination and dignity. Aaliyah's father stood behind her, chest swelling with pride, knowing that the lesson extended beyond lemonade and cookies. It was about character, about resilience, about standing strong when the world doubts you. It was about teaching those who look down on others that the smallest, quietest voices can carry the greatest power. As the evening settled in, golden light fading into soft pinks and purples, Aaliyah poured lemonade one last time, arranging her remaining cookies on a tray, and looked up at the neighborhood she had transformed. She did not just see the street. She saw the faces of those who had doubted her, those who had watched, and those who had learned. She had changed the rhythm of the day, the mood of the street, and even the heart of a man used to commanding attention and respect. He had been humbled, reminded that true value does not come from wealth or privilege, but from integrity, effort, and courage. The street seemed to exhale, the tension dissolving into quiet smiles and soft laughter. Children clutched lemonade cups with wide eyes. Neighbors nodded silently, some wiping tears, some shaking their heads in disbelief. And in the center of it all, Aaliyah stood small yet immense, a figure of quiet power and undeniable dignity. The moral was clear. Courage, patience, and self-respect have the power to transform hearts, challenge prejudice, and inspire change. The richest man had learned it. The children had learned it. The adults had learned it. And Aaliyah had embodied it. As twilight deepened, the sunlight catching the last droplets of condensation on the lemonade pitcher, she poured her final cup with the calm confidence of someone who knew the value of persistence. Her mother hugged her again, whispering, "You've shown them what it means to never give up." Aaliyah nodded, the satisfaction in her eyes mirrored in the faces of everyone who had witnessed the transformation. Mr. Harrison smiled quietly, watching the little girl he had once dismissed stand fully realized in her talent and dignity. Life-changing moments often come from the most unexpected places, and those who look down on others may learn their greatest lessons from those they once ignored. The lesson lingered on the street, in the hearts of everyone watching. Talent, dignity, and perseverance cannot be bought, and humility is often the greatest gift one can receive. Aaliyah's small hands, sticky with syrup and sugar, her curls shining in the fading light, and her steady gaze became a symbol of triumph over dismissal, over mockery, over indifference. And in that moment, everyone understood that true value is measured not in wealth or status, but in the courage to stand, the patience to persist, and the grace to rise above the world's doubts.